I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. And I'd like to call on Councillor Neal to read the land acknowledgement statement. Councillor Neal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It states that the city of Thorold is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Adirondack, the Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The city of Thorold stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, adoption of the agenda. I have a mover, Councillor Longo, and a seconder, Councillor Neal, that we adopt the agenda. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Adoption of the minutes. Minutes from April 19th, April 25th, and April 26th. I got Councillor DeRose to move, Councillor Hanley to second. Is there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Mayor's report. On Thursday, April 21st, Economic Development Manager Marco Marino and I attended the Marine Club annual luncheon at the Holiday Inn and Suites in St. Catharines. Bruce Burrows, President CEO of Chamber of Marine Commerce, was the guest speaker, and his speech was titled "In Choppy Waters, What Do We Hold On To?" The 2022 Great Lakes St. Lawrence Shipping. It addressed the challenges and opportunities ahead for this year's shipping season in the context of the current global trade and political climate. On Friday, April 22nd, I attended and spoke at the grand opening event for the Walker Sports and Ability Center at Canada Games Park in the city of Thorold. CAO Manoj Dalwaria, Director of Public Works and Community Services Jeff Holman, Manager of Community Services Curtis Dray, Economic Development Manager Marco Marino, Councillors Wilson, Decker, Neal, Sentence, and Regional Council Whalen were also in attendance. On Monday, April 25th, we had an excellent town and gown meeting and recapped the past year, our successes, and areas that require improvement. We continue to work on issues as they arise and will prepare for the fall semesters with our next meeting scheduled on Monday, August 22nd. Our subcommittee, consisting of our community partners, also continues to meet on a regular basis between our main committee meetings. On Thursday, April 28th, Councillor Neal and I attended the medal reveal ceremony for the Niagara 2022 Canada Summer Games held at Ravine Winery in Niagara-on-the-Lake. This event was held 100 days out from the Summer Games this August, and they unveiled the bronze, silver, and gold medals designed by St. Catharines graphic artist Sean O'Melia, a graduate of Niagara College. On August 28th, I attended the Kickoff for the Help Kids Shine campaign held at the 4 Point Sheraton in Thorold. Help Kids Shine is an annual community campaign to raise funds and awareness in support of the Niagara Children's Center in partnership with Move 105.7, Hits FM, and 610 CKTB. The month of May is the focus of this important campaign. Each year, the Niagara Children's Center supports over 5,800 children. But there are still many children waiting for service. Let's work together to help them reach their fundraising goal of $250,000 and shorten their wait list. The City of Thorold, in conjunction with United Way Niagara, are hosting the Period Promise campaign, which will run from Friday, April 29th until Friday, May 27th. The goal of the campaign is to raise awareness about individuals living in poverty in our community who are struggling to afford period products. Drop-off bins are located at City Hall and the TCAG, for the collection of pads, tampons, panty liners, and underwear for women and girls in need in our community. Thank you, James Simons, for spearheading this important initiative. The City of Thorold is seeking a youth ambassador to represent the city in the opening ceremonies of the Niagara 2022 Canada Summer Games. Applicants must be between 12 and 18 years of age and a City of Thorold resident. Application deadline is this Friday, May 6th, and to apply, please visit thorold.ca/ambassador. Arid Recovery Homes Walkathon, Walk for Wellness in May, celebrates Niagara residents working hard to recover from addictions. This walkathon is their 23rd annual and is taking place virtually during the month of May with a fundraising goal of $20,000. Arid Recovery Homes is a nonprofit registered charity operating since 1976 and offers supportive living environment for men and women in Niagara focused on overcoming addictions. It has residential homes for men in Thorold and Fort Erie with 8 beds each, and a wish home for women in Welland with 6 beds. Anyone interested in participating or donating can go to aridhomes.ca for more information. That's aridhomes.ca. The Thorold Garden Club, the Thorold Horticultural Society, will kick off the Thorold Year of the Garden contest with 4 categories to choose from on National Garden Day, which is June 18th. Please visit thoroldgardenclub.com for more information and nomination details. Winners will be announced in September. International Firefighters Day is observed each year on May 4th. On this date, you are invited to remember the past firefighters who have died while serving our community or dedicated their lives to protecting the safety of us all. It is also a day in which current and past firefighters can be thanked for their contributions, which do not go unnoticed. On behalf of our residents, city staff, and council, a special thank you to Thorold Fire and Emergency Services. May 14th is Prescription Drug Drop-Off event, which will be held rain or shine across the Niagara region. Niagara residents can drop off any old, unused, or expired prescription drugs at any of the 6 designated locations across the region from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. The focus of this event is to promote the opportunity for the public to dispose of unused, expired prescription medications in a safe and environmentally friendly manner. For locations, please visit niagararegion.ca /health/prescription drug drop-off. That's niagararegion.ca /health/prescription drug drop-off. A free cafe seminar on Alzheimer's, Healthy Brains Cafe, will be held on May 15th at Holy Rosary Hall, 35 Queen Street South, with 2 sessions, the first at 10:45 a.m. and the second at 12:15 p.m. These sessions will set the record straight on the condition and discuss treatment options, as well as presentations on how to prevent or manage the disease. Speakers will include representatives from Alzheimer's Society Niagara Region, and the event is free. Earth Day events. Councillor Neal and Councillor Sentence participated in the annual Earth Day cleanup on Saturday, April 23rd, along with volunteers and committee members at the Mel Swart Lake Gibson Conservation Park. Thank you to everyone who was involved in this important initiative. I greeted the volunteers from the Rotary Club of St. Catharines who met at the Lock 7 Viewing Center. As part of the Rotary Great Lakes Watershed Cleanup, they hosted their cleanup also on April 23rd, and it began at the Lock 7 Viewing Center and ended at Glendale Avenue. From there, I went to St. John's Conservation Area, the Trout Pond, to meet Elizabeth DeFrucio, who threw the ceremonial first cast to open trout season in an NPCA ceremony honoring her late husband, Dominic Mickey DeFrucia. who passed away in February at the age of 95. Mickey was a City of Thorold representative on the NPCA Board of Directors for 25 years and was made an honorary lifetime member due to his dedication and commitment to conservation. On Saturday, April 30th, I cut the ribbon on the grand opening of the J.C. Patissier Bakery located at 33 Front Street South. Councillors Neil Decker, MP Jeff Birch, and MP Vance Badaway were also in attendance. This new bakery cafe is a great addition to our revitalized downtown, and we wish Anza and Alzanjo a very successful future. On Sunday, May 1st, the Viking Cruise Line's Octantis made its way through the Welland Canal during its inaugural voyage. Jane and I had the opportunity to view the ship on the west side of the ferry dock in Port Robinson. Thank you, Port Robinson Proud, for keeping us updated on its approximate arrival time, and there was many people lined along the canal to watch the ship go through. Sunday, September 8th is Mother's Day. On behalf of city staff and council, happy Mother's Day. Enjoy your special day, and it goes without saying that you are special all year long. In closing, as COVID-19 community infections continue to rise, please continue to follow all public health safety measures. This remains extremely important. And that's the end of my mayor's report. And up next, we have a public meeting. Brock Business Park area regarding development charge background study and bylaw. I'll call to order the public meeting being held pursuant to Section 12 of the Development Charges Act 1997. The purpose of the meeting is to give the public an opportunity to provide comments and make representations on the 2022 Brock Business Park area development charge background study and proposed bylaw. This study calculates new development charges for growth-related city wastewater assets in the Brock Business Park area. Council will not be taking any action this evening on the report or bylaw. And up first, we have a presentation from the applicant's planning consultant. I'll call on Brian Tan and Gary Scanlon of Watson and Associates, Economists Limited, for their presentations on the finding of the study. Brian, welcome. Are you here, or is Gary here as well?
I'm here this evening, Mr.
There
Mayor.
you are, both of you. Okay. Welcome to council, and the floor is yours.
Okay, so it's Gary Scanlon. Byron won't be here this evening, but obviously I'll be making the presentation as I've done many times before with council. Oh, I apologize, Byron is here.
I am here.
So we are pleased to be before you. We put together a bylaw, a presentation with respect to background study we've prepared on your behalf. If you recall, a number of years ago, we undertook a special area charge for the Brock Business Park. The bylaw is coming to an end where they only have a 5-year useful life. So we're looking to update the calculations within that bylaw and put it forth for your consideration. So as with other public meetings, we follow a similar type of format where we'll present the findings of the study and then open it up through the mayor for any questions to council and then the public. And as you've noted, there's no decisions tonight. It's just to receive any feedback that might be provided from the general public. Next slide, please. And again. Next, okay. So as I've noted, in order to have a development charge, you must provide a background study, and that study must identify the proposed growth within that particular area. So this is an area-specific charge, and this charge will only apply to the Brock Business Park area. As we've noted in 2017, we've updated the calculations that were contained therein. So really it's more of an update on the capital costs and adjustments to any growth that may have occurred in the area. Next slide. The public meeting tonight, you'll recall that with development charges, there's a mandatory 60-day process between when we release the background study and the first time that council can consider passage of the bylaw. So we released the study on April 8th. Minimum 60 days would take us to at least June 7th. So we are well within the timeline set out by the legislation. The public meeting tonight is in the middle, and that provides an opportunity to receive feedback on the proposed calculations we've provided. Next slide. Development charges are basically a mechanism for municipalities to recover infrastructure costs related to residential and non-residential growth. These costs are generally in addition to what a developer would pay internal to the subdivision. Those are called localized works, and those still remain the responsibility of the developer. So internal roads, water main, sewers, etc. So the responsibility for those costs continue to lie with individual developers within those subdivisions. What we include is more of the broader costs associated with services normally outside of a subdivision. In this particular case, we're looking at a specific area that has received a level of servicing, but it needs enhanced servicing in order to allow the continued development within the Brock Business Park. Next slide. I think we've spoken to you before about the changes in the legislation. We've seen since 2019, the province making refinements to the Development Charges Act. Bill 108 introduced some unique provisions that allow certain types of developments to, instead of paying at the time of building permit, they'll pay in installments over time. So you have rental housing and institutional development, which will basically pay upon occupancy, and then in 6 payments over the next 5 years, they would make the payments of the appropriate development charges. And for nonprofit housing, they'd make the payments over 20 years. As well, there's a mandatory freeze if you receive an application for a site plan or zoning amendment, and it freezes the rates that are in effect at the time you acknowledge and accept that application. All of those particular charges are basically allowed to add inflation over time, so the charges would, to some extent, index in their quantum over those different periods. Now, Bill 197 made some changes to the calculations. They changed the eligible services to some extent. They reduced it down to only 20 eligible services. But however, on the positive side, there used to be a mandatory 10% deduction. That's been removed for the softer services. And they mandated that universities under Bill 213 are now fully exempt from the development charges. Next slide, please. These are the eligible services. So you can see that for the most part, they're the KEER services, which include water, wastewater, storm, services related to a highway is basically your roads, transit, fire, police, ambulance, etc. So more of the significant infrastructure needs still continue, but there were some which were lost as a result of the changes in the legislation. Next slide. So the simplified steps we've talked about many times in the past. The Act requires us to identify the amount, type, and location of growth, identify the servicing needs to accommodate the growth, and with those servicing needs, identify the capital costs. There's a number of deductions we must consider, whether they apply or not, and then we end up with a net cost, which is what we end up spreading across the growth within either, in this particular case, on an area basis. For many other services, we would do that across the entire of the municipality. Next slide. So in essence, we look at the infrastructure cost to accommodate growth, and we divide it by both residential and non-residential growth to develop the charges. On the residential side, we develop a low, medium, high density charges. So there's different charges. The bigger the home, basically, the larger the charge, because on average, there's more people in a single family, let's say, versus a medium density, a townhouse versus an apartment. Well, the range, the charges will vary based on the unit size. Non-residential is always represented on a cost per square foot. Next slide. There are mandatory exemptions. We've talked about this many times before. The newer one, which has been added, is basically to recognize that a unit can be put into an ancillary dwelling. So if you have a detached garage, or let's say a pool house or a shed of some sort, you can add a unit within that and not be able to impose the development charge. Or if there's a new single family home, you can add an apartment in that and not be able to recover a charge associated with that additional apartment. So that's something that's new, that's been added in from what we had historically, along with the exemption for the university. With respect to discretionary exemptions, that's where you as a council, as many other councils, can consider additional exemptions as you feel appropriate to address any particular types of developments that you'd wish to not impose the charge. Next slide. And just with the discretionary, hospitals are not charged, places of worship and farm buildings are presently exempted. Next slide, please. As we move forward, as you've experienced with growth throughout your municipality, as growth occurs, it gives rise to additional infrastructure costs that have to be built in order to accommodate the growth. There's no magic to paying for that cost. You're allowed, it's not mandatory, but the Development Charges Act gives you an opportunity to collect a significant portion of those costs from development. But if you didn't collect the money, if you chose not to have a development charge bylaw, your recourse is to recover that money from either existing taxpayers or existing water and wastewater ratepayers. So it's quite a narrow decision tree. As growth occurs, you have infrastructure costs, and where you recover it is dependent upon the policies you adopt. Next slide. The area that we're talking about right now is identified on the map. So this is the subject lands for this area-specific charge. And within these areas, any development which occurs would be subject to the charge we'll provide in a moment. Next slide. The growth forecast identifies, to some extent, a level of apartment developments which are anticipated to occur within the development area. In total, there's about 400 regular types of units and about 1,100 student housing units. So in total, there's about the potential for about almost 1,800 people to be included in those developments. On the non-residential side, there's developments, non-residential developments, industrial, commercial, institutional, and there's about 400,000 square feet of land that we've identified that could develop within this area. Next slide. Your current charges for a single detached unit is just over $1,400. Non-residential pays 67 cents per square foot as a charge. The proposed charges that we've calculated is presented on the next slide, and you can see the singles have moved up to $1,800, and the non-residential has increased to 85 cents per square foot. And if we look at that as on a comparative basis, next slide, you can see the increase is roughly about $401 for the largest unit, a single and semi-detached. Obviously, for smaller apartments, the charge is much more reduced, probably roughly about half of this charge. And for non-residential, you can see that the cost has increased by 18 cents per square foot. Next slide. You have a citywide charge, which would still be imposed on these lands. In addition to that, they would, development within this area would pay that area specific charge. So you can see in total, a residential, a single detached would go from 21,600 up to just over 22,000. And on the non-residential side, you can see commercial and institutional would go from 974 to 992. Industrial has a lower charge. It would go from 371 to 389. Excuse me. So those are the proposed charges. And if we just take a look at how that compares to other your neighbors within the Niagara region, you can see on the bottom, the orange is the regional charge. The darker color charge is for yourselves, the local municipality. So you can see the highest charge is in Lincoln right now, in Camden. In total, it'd be a little over $60,000. If you're not in the Camden area, then you're a little bit more than $50,000 for a single detached unit. You can see with your charges, you're in the area of about 45,000. And as I say, there's about a $400 increase as a result of the area specific charges update. Next slide. Looking at the commercial, you can see it's a very similar type of relationship. Once again, Lincoln has the highest charges so that a retail type of development would be paying over $30 per square foot for a commercial building. Pelham and Lincoln Camden would be roughly $25, and you're lower than that in the range of about $24. The last slide is on the industrial, and you can see the industrial charges are significantly reduced as compared to the commercial. The highest charges being in Pelham, running at about $16 a square foot. In total, with your regional charge and this area specific charge, you can see you're running below $10 a square foot. Next slide. So that concludes the presentation. That summarizes the findings of the study that we've provided. After receiving input, we would be back to assist council in passing the bylaw on June 7th. And if there's any inquiries or adjustments, we would work with staff to make those in between now and that particular point. Mr. Mayor, I'll turn the meeting back to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gary, for your presentation. Now I'll open the floor up for any questions. Are there any questions for the presenter? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could ask you through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter, you mentioned exemptions, and now we could add to the list. Are you saying then that other than what's legislated, if we feel that we need to add something to the list in order to cover more funds, we can? Is that what you're stating there?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The discretionary exemptions are at the discretion of the local, of the municipality. So if you chose to exempt some other form of development, a class of development or a type of development, then you can do that. Those exemptions, though, have to be funded. So if you choose to exempt certain types of developments, then the lost revenue has to be made up as a contribution. So
okay, thank you very much. Understand me. That's what I was figuring. That was how it was working out to be. So what I might also, if I could, so through you, Mr. Mayor, also, you know, I know you've been working on this for some time, and recently we've seen how the rate of inflation has gone. Are these calculations compensating for that inflation to provide for the services, as we can see what's happening?
Yes, they have. We've indexed the charges. For the most part, it's going up as a result of increased cost that we've seen in recent times. I think with things such as the supply chain issues and just we're finding that costs for water and wastewater, as well as roads, have basically jumped up significantly. So in part, that's what's influencing the increase in these charges.
Okay, thank you. Just one other question, Mr. Mayor, please, through you again to the presenter. So this area, just to get me clear, so it's site-specific to that area that you outlined with the 406 and over to where the new Canada Games facility is. So say if there isn't the money or we're not charging enough to recover the costs associated with that, any cost to recover that loss would only be subjected to the people within that boundary, or would it be subjected to the residents also paying a portion?
We would hope that the development of the lands and the associated servicing is adequate and correct. Obviously, we keep reviewing this at a minimum every 5 years with staff. So these are our latest and greatest projections, and we feel comfortable in what we've provided therein.
Thank you very much. No further questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Gary. Gary, so what you're saying, basically, in your situation, you're restricted by provincial policy. Is that correct?
You're muted, Gary.
Sorry, I'm not clear in what areas you're asking, Councillor, that we're restricted.
How are you able to get to your numbers? And I'm just wondering why there's such a discrepancy between ours and when you showed that chart with Lincoln.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a number of different factors that are at play. Number one, obviously, water and wastewater servicing can play a significant part. With Camden, they installed some additional stormwater servicing. So there was an added cost in order to develop those lands. So that's reflected in their particular higher costs, but only in the Camden area. Then you can see that the charge drops down within the rest of Lincoln. So it depends on the servicing costs, let's say for water and wastewater. It also depends on, we have to do level of service calculations. So that's something that may restrict. It puts an upper limit on what we could collect. The municipality may deem that the infrastructure, such as parks and recreation and libraries, are adequate in order to accommodate additional growth. So those are a number of the factors that are at play. I would point out that when you're looking at Wainfleet, that the region doesn't impose water and wastewater charges within Wainfleet. If you're going to develop in Wainfleet, you have to build your own septic system and your own water supply. So that's why you'll see a significant drop on those charts for Wainfleet.
Thank you, Gary. Just one more question. When I'm looking at page 13 of your presentation, the relationships between needs to service new development versus funding. Do you, just from your experience, do you have a ballpark of how much falls on the residential taxpayer and the rest of the community for a development such as this? Is there a percentage? Is there a number, the true and tried number that works, or is it just it'd be a ballpark estimate?
Historically, we were seeing in the range of about 75 to 80% of the costs are recoverable from DC. So the residual would go back on your property taxpayer or your water and wastewater ratepayer. There have been some adjustments, such as removing that mandatory 10% deduction. So it's lifted your ability to recover for parks, recreation, and library. But at the same time, they reduced the services. So some municipalities have lost the ability to recover certain types of costs. Planning studies, for example, have been restricted. We can still maybe include an official plan, but any other type of planning studies basically been eliminated. So I'd still say we're probably still in the range of about 75 to 80% growth-related infrastructure recoverable, And that leaves 20 to 25% that potentially you're out of pocket on.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for explaining that. And just one more question. Can you quantify on a project of this magnitude, can you quantify that 20 to 25%? Just a estimate?
So, sorry, in this particular case, we're looking at wastewater. Wastewater is one where you generally get a high recovery. So it approaches 100% recovery generally. Although if you're applying any of those exemptions, those would be a lost revenue, either the mandatory or as a result of your discretionary, there would be some potential for lost revenues for this area specific charge.
But you can't find out before the project commences how much that is.
Not necessarily the project before the development occurs. So let's say,
Okay.
let's say the university, tripled its size and used up all the capacity for the wastewater. You can't charge the university. So that would be an exemption where you would lose the revenue.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Any further questions for the presenter? Seeing none, Gary, thank you so much. And Brian as well. And now we're going to move on to public participation. At this time, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on the applications received? Are there anybody online to speak? There's no one online. I'll ask one more time. At this time, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on the applications received? And there is no one online, so I'll move to closing remarks. This fulfills the requirements of the Development Charges Act 1997 pursuant to Section 12. Council will be considering the report and bylaw passage at its meeting on June 7th, 2022. If anyone wishes to receive notice of Council's decision, please provide your contact information and indicate so to the City Clerk at clerk@thorold.ca. That's clerk@thorold.ca. The public meeting for the Development Charge Background Study and Bylaw is now closed. Once again, thank you, Gary and Brian.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Okay, we're moving on to motions for council support. And I have City of Thorold. Councillor Longo, you're up on this. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Sentence. Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to read a motion, a resolution put forward by the town of Gravenhurst, and then I'll make a comment.
Yeah.
Whereas the country of Ukraine has experienced a premeditated and unprovoked invasion by Russia, and whereas silence is complicity, and whereas Canada imports hundreds of millions of dollars worth of goods from Russia each year, and whereas negative financial impacts upon a country can be used as a means to deter further conflict, be it therefore resolved that the correspondence from the town of Georgina regarding sanctions on Russia be received for information, and that the town of Gravenhurst unequivocally denounce Russia's unjustifiable war against Ukraine, and that the town of Gravenhurst supports the sanctions which the federal government of Canada has thus far imposed on Russia, and that effective immediately until a time when the sovereignty of Ukraine is once again unchallenged, the town of Gravenhurst will, 1, not purchase any products, plywood, fertilizer, steel, furniture, or machinery, which can easily be traced to have originated in Russia, and 2, insist that any future contracts for service for the town of Gravenhurst abide by these same limitations within our municipality, and that upon confirmation that the Belarusian military is engaged within Ukraine, that the town of Gravenhurst apply these limitations upon goods from that country as well, and that this decision of Gravenhurst Council be forwarded to all other municipalities within Ontario, requesting that they enact similar measures so that as a united front, we can make a noticeable difference. Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a brief comment.
Go ahead.
When I read this, I thought we needed to do whatever we could in whatever small way. Being a small municipality in a country like, in Ontario, in a country like Canada, I think we need to make our voice heard. We need to enact a resolution like this for the city of Thorold. And again, in whatever small way we can do something, I believe we need to. We cannot be silent, as it says in this motion. So I'd like to put that forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Longo, and I couldn't agree more with you. And I think the clerk has put City of Thorold in those key points, Councillor Longo, so that it refers to us directly as well. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that want to speak on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Motion to receive and, oh, go ahead, Councillor Kenny.
So it was in, excuse me, it was in that motion. I don't know if the city of Thorold has purchased all our fertilizer, but that was in the motion. So I think we should direct our staff that if they've purchased it and they can cancel it, if it is from there, that we do the right thing as the motion said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll refer that for staff direction. Okay, is that, you have that? Okay. Motion to receive and file minutes and adopt recommendations of council committees and boards. Minutes to review for information purposes. I have a mover, Councillor Wilson, and a seconder, Councillor Kenny, to receive and file the minutes from the Age-Friendly Ad Hoc Committee and the Thorold Public Library Board. One's for, Ad Hoc Committee from the Age Friendly's March 10th, and the Public Library Board minutes are from March 23rd. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we have minutes to endorse recommendation. And that's the Age Friendly Ad Hoc Committee 2023 calendar printing. I have a mover, Councillor Neal, and a seconder, Councillor Sentence. And the report is now on the screen. It's report CC 2022-36, respecting the recommendations of the Age-Friendly Committee. Do you want to read that to our city clerk, our deputy clerk, Joanne Goulet? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the recommendations of the report are that report CC 2022-36, dated April 28th, 2022, respecting Age-Friendly Ad Hoc Committee 2023 calendar printing be received and the following recommendations be approved. That the $550 in the 2021 grant allocation carry forward be moved from the encumbrance reserve account to the 2022 Age-Friendly calendar account. That $500 be transferred from the Age-Friendly housing meeting account and the forum luncheon account to the 2022 Age-Friendly calendar account. That the quote in the amount of $5,860 from Dixon Inc. for the printing of the 2023 calendars be approved. That any additional cost of up to $340 be approved to a maximum total budget of $6,200, and that 2,500 full color calendars be printed. That concludes the report.
Speakers to that report. Go ahead, Councillor Neal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we've been working on, the Age-Friendly Committee, I should say, has been working on this for about 2 years now. And it will promote the city of Thorold. Specifically, it'll be done for the Canada Games in August, so we can hand them out in that perspective. And it looks like it's going to be an excellent calendar to be for the 2023 year.
And am I correct, Councillor Neal, the large portion of them costs have been by sponsors, am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wants to speak to that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Statement by councillors. And I will get Councillor Neal up first on his first statement respecting official plan and zoning bylaws.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And we've already had a council meeting regarding this. And so I don't want to have to say too much more about it other than when we review the official plan and the zoning bylaws, it will include a number of factors that have come down from the province. And hopefully we can alleviate having 10, 12-story buildings in amongst a single-family home. And bring forward affordable housing for our community in a better way. So that staff be directed to review our official plan and zoning bylaws and report back to council on the inclusion of affordable housing options, a definition for affordable housing in all new housing developments, and that housing projects design project to visually enhance the area. And I'd like to add one more, which will come forward a little bit further down in our meeting tonight. That St. Catherine's response to affordability task force recommendations be included in the review.
So that you want added to this particular staff direction?
That's correct.
Have we got that added to the clerk? Okay. So that staff direction, you're moving it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Longo. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. And Councillor Neal, you have a second statement regarding downtown affordable housing report.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. I will read it. That staff be directed to prepare a downtown affordable housing plan report, which includes information respecting the approval of the thorough downtown boundaries, the use of city-owned properties, the ability to require the inclusion of affordable housing in any revitalization plans for owners of downtown properties, and information respecting ways to make it more inviting to build affordable housing. And just a few comments regarding that. Again, we did talk extensively at our meeting other night about this. And it's a place that we couldn't put affordable housing, unlike the Q Road. And so that is the reason why I brought this forward tonight, to be specific about looking at an area where we could put affordable housing, and it would help the downtown, be more people downtown to live, work, and play. And we were just doing the Beaver Dams Park, enhancing that. So the downtown area is going to be revitalized, and this will be part of the revitalization.
Okay, so you're asking for a staff report on that, and do you have a seconder on that one? Councillor Sentence. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. And just the region official plan should be coming to council for approval either at the end of June or July. And then once that's completed, then the new council in the city of Thorold will start work on our new official plan and comprehensive zoning bylaw. Am I correct with that, Manoj?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, just so you know the timeline. So getting this information that can be incorporated in the future is a good first step. Thank you. Councillor DeRose, your first statement regarding memorial benches at Beaver Dams Park and Band Shelter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yeah, I've been contacted. I'll give you an example of one of the contacts I've had recently. Just someone whose wife walked in the park daily. Unfortunately, she passed of cancer last year. Unfortunately, he has cancer now, and he's asked if he can put a bench in her honor. And of course, unfortunately, there's a waiting list. So, and keep in mind that residents are paying the cost of these benches. So, you know, I think a bench adds it's a great asset to any park. So my request to my fellow councilors is that staff be directed to add more memorial benches to Beaver Dams Park plan development, as there's a waiting list and the cost is covered by applicants/residents, and that the inclusion of permanent seats benches facing the band shelter for concerts be considered. And if possible, if I can get the cost, because I understand they've gone up recently $400. And I am a little concerned the escalating costs, because I compared it to St. Catherine's costs. They've got 4 style of benches, but their costs for the lower end benches are much less costly. And I'm just wondering if we can get a costing, and just because, sometimes we're comparing salaries, burial costs with other communities. I'd like to compare these memorial bench costs to other communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And do you have a seconder for that staff report? Councillor Hanley. Okay. Anyone want to speak to that? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for some clarity, if Councillor DeRose could, he's asking that they're directed to add more memorial benches. Are you just looking for a staff report first?
Yeah, just the feasibility of it. And I know they're going to be, we've got a master plan that's already been approved by council. So I just wanted to know if we can add this, and, of course it'll be up to council. So I just asked for council support to come back with a
So this is a
small
report.
Yes, nothing time consuming for sure.
So
All right, as long as we see a report, thank you.
Staff report, yes. Councillor Neal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, great idea, Councillor DeRose. And Age-Friendly Committee have been talking about this and discussing it with Curtis for a little while now. And do we need any extra benches? I thought we had a lot of benches going in. And are they all spoken for? Maybe a question to Curtis, are they all spoken for, or can some of them be utilized as Councillor DeRose has mentioned?
That can all be part of that report. Is Curtis on? Go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me right now, but I believe the majority of them are spoken for. However, I can come back with the staff report and include that.
Thank you.
That'll be included. I had Councillor Hanley with his hand up. Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Yeah, okay, yes. I didn't have time to go back, but in our recreational plan study that was done, I don't know if there was a specific amount that was put in there, but if there was, if the report come back, if we have to amend that. I know Mr. Dre said he's gonna look into it, but then we'll have to amend it. So as to add more benches.
Yeah, the more benches, and there is a cost that's already been established. So basically, Curtis, they're looking not so much at what our cost is, but some comparables. That's all. Okay? Okay.
Thank you.
And everybody else good? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Councillor DeRose, second statement respecting volunteers and keyed access to park and pool lighting. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Last summer, I was at the pool with my kids, and I was surprised to see the lights had been going on at 5 in the afternoon. That specific day in July, it was light out till 9:15. When I asked the pool girls or the manager of the pool, whoever's working, they said they weren't allowed to go in the electrical room to turn on and off the lights. And so to me, this was a big waste of taxpayer money, having lights on in daylight. It's happened at other parks, C.E. Gross. It's happened at McMillan Park. I'm not aware of it's Sullivan, but I'm sure it has. So I just feel in the past, volunteers and people that could be trusted had a key to this. I know when I coached Thorold CC Thorold's men's soccer club throughout the 90s, in the late 80s and throughout the 90s, I had access to open the lights before the game or when it got dark to save taxpayers money. And then I turned them off right after the game, and not having to wait for city workers, because sometimes they were busy doing other things. So here's my request, just to, on behalf of taxpayers, that staff be directed to provide a staff report respecting the provision of any necessary keys to Thorold volunteers to turn on and off the lighting when necessary at Thorold Parks and the community pool. This report should include information respecting any risk associated with granting access to these areas to community volunteers, because I've been told, there is a liability issue, but I think the benefit would outweigh the cost. And even if we needed some more insurance, I don't know. I don't understand the liability of turning a light on and off. I really don't. But if we can have that explained in the report, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Kenny. Did you want to second that?
No, I wanted to ask Councillor DeRose a question.
Go ahead.
Well, what, like, turning the lights off is one thing. What about locking the gates?
Yeah, that's not the locking the gate's not going to waste taxpayers' money, Councillor Kenny. But when lights are on and I'm driving by a park and nobody's even playing, that's very frustrating. Yeah, the city workers will come and.
No, my question is, are you suggesting that they should turn the lights off and lock the gates? That's what I'm saying. That's what
I think that's more responsibility than I'm asking for. I just think once the game is over, or like, for example, the pool, there was nothing to be locked. It was just they went on 4 hours earlier than they needed to be. So, I'll leave that up to staff. If staff recommends that might be an ideal also. I'll leave that up to staff. I'm not too concerned about the gates. I'm more concerned about the amount of money being, and that's another thing. While I'm on it, I did ask for a report on our lighting costs for 2 previous summers. And and that was in July, I believe. July, it was last August, I believe. And I still haven't found out what our lighting costs were for those parks. I wanted to get one from last summer and one from pre-COVID, if possible.
Thank you.
Councillor Kenny, I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Okay.
No, you didn't.
Councillor Sentence, you had your hand up. Go ahead, Councillor Sentence. Go ahead, you're muted. You're muted. Right? Oh. Okay, anyone else? Curtis, did you want to comment on that, or you're good with that?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will complete the staff report as requested.
Thank you. Anyone else here? I had Councillor Kenny, go ahead.
My problem is the liability. If we start handing out keys, especially for the pool, and somebody goes home and forgets to lock the gate and one person drowns, that's one person too many. I am against handing out keys to people for the reasons that we have students that work 3 to 11 in the summer. That's their job. They got to go to 4 places. They have to check the cemetery. They have to check the ball diamonds, the soccer fields, and the pool. That's their job. It's also work that's done by the union staff for the city. So I'm completely against that. And for that reason, I'm going to ask for a recorded vote. We do have an upcoming election, and maybe the union will want to know who's looking for a report to
order, Mr.
work on
Mayor.
their
We
job.
can't be talking about an election.
Listen.
Come on, Mr. Mayor. Point of order, please.
Wait.
Okay, this is an election platform.
No, wait.
Please. You don't even allow.
Councillor Kenny, all the.
I didn't say nothing about the election. I said it's a year of the election.
Okay.
You did so, Councillor Kenny. You
Enough.
said it.
Mr. Mayor, you can't be mentioning about
Councillor
elections.
Hanley.
You know that yourself.
Councillor
It's a
Hanley.
council meeting.
Okay, I'm sorry I said it.
I've
I'm
got it
sorry
under
I said it.
control.
Please just get a recorded.
We're just trying to get a report here, Councillor Kenny. Go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, the key and the locking, I'm not for, but if you're just asking for the lights and everything, I can tell you, baseball has wanted them on later, and some of the residents around Sullivan, and sometimes our staff's busy, and if it's just turning on lights and turning off lights, then I will ask for the report. But yeah, not for keys for locking and unlocking things. So I will support this, but just for the lighting. Thank you.
And I'll ask the clerk, did you?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a reminder that with the procedural bylaw, this is just statements by councillors. So a motion in this section is actually not debatable. So if they would like to discuss a timeline for coming back or what's being requested, that's fine, but debating the matter itself is not in order with the procedural bylaw.
Thank
so
you.
We do need a seconder for the motion as well. For a
I
report.
know that. I've got.
Can I
that.
speak on that a little more, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilor DeRose.
Yeah, Councilor Sentence, thank you for clarifying. Obviously, Councilor Kenny wasn't paying attention. I said,
Okay,
at no time did I say a key for the gate to open and close the gate. All I said was the lights, access to the room with the lights. And that I, at no time, refer to taking time away from unionized workers. And you had to throw in a jab about
Okay.
unionized workers need to know.
Okay, Councilor DeRose.
That is,
Keep
Mr.
it
Mayor,
up,
that is
Carm.
BS.
Keep it up.
Thank you.
Listen.
Thank you, Mr.
Let's
Kenny.
have order here
It's
and
about turning the lights off and on, like Councilor Sentence said, saving the taxpayer money. Too bad you don't live in Thorold. You couldn't care less about the taxpayer.
Councilor DeRose, that's out of order. Listen, the bottom line here is we're talking about an issue with some decorum and respect for one another, and I don't want to get off on a tangent on something that we're not even supposed to be talking
Respect
about.
is mutual, Mr. Mayor.
Well,
Respect
just
is
remember.
mutual.
Okay? And the other thing is, we're just asking for a staff report here. We're not asking to change policies, or we're not asking anything. The city will come back with the risk management and tell us their reasonings why they do things a certain way. Simple as that. Okay? Anyone else? Seeing none. I had a mover. Who's a seconder on? I don't have a seconder on this motion. Councillor Longo. Okay, and I'll turn it over to the clerk.
Yep, for a recorded vote, Councillor DeRose,
Go ahead, Councillor DeRose, you're muted.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, of course in favor, yes.
Councillor Handley,
Yes.
Councillor Kenny,
Against.
Councillor Longo,
In favor.
Councillor Neal,
In favor?
Councillor Sentence,
Favor.
Councillor Wilson,
In favor.
Mr. Mayor.
In favor.
That's carried, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, and now we'll move on to Councillor Hanley for a statement respecting Canada Games official opening. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to that official opening, is the public now able to attend the facility? I've been asked by some residents that they've seen it's an official opening. They've wanting to know if there's going to be a schedule on the City of Thorold's website as to when and what types of features may be available to citizens and how they may, go there to use the facilities which their tax dollars are paying for.
Thank you.
Is the day coming when the public can actually use it?
I'll ask our Director of Public Works and Community Services, Jeff Holman, if he can comment on that.
So, Mr. Mayor, as I understand, the building is open for public viewing. We're still working with the independent operator with respect to the scheduling, and that might take another couple of weeks to resolve. There's still some onboarding that the independent operator is doing from a staffing perspective. So you can expect that there'll be some additional announcements in the next couple of weeks that will talk about who you can call, how we can work things out, and if you want to come in and rent or use the facility.
Councillor Hanley?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. If I could do a follow-up on that, you mentioned about scheduling. Mr. Mayor, I had asked at the last meeting in regards to scheduling and if we may have known what hours we may be using for the ice palaces, and I'm sure my fellow councilors are aware of that. Unfortunately, I had to receive from a member of the public just hours after the meeting an actual schedule. So I'm wanting to know, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to get into details. I have a schedule. I know that the City of Thorold has 53 hours. I know the ice allotment for Brock University, the City of St. Catharines, the City of Thorold. And I know that this has been out there for weeks. And Mr. Mayor, I'm disappointed that at the last meeting, when I asked for this information, I was told that there is none. So either the document I have is wrong, or that staff knew that there was ice that was already allocated. We have 53 hours of responsibility. I have all the ice time for rinks 1 and 2.
Well,
And
my
I'm disappointed as a counselor that I didn't have this information forthcoming to me when I had asked for it.
Well,
Was staff, not you, Ms. Mayor, just one thing, I don't want to blame anybody. Was staff possibly not aware that there was a schedule out there?
No, I think staff's working with what user groups will utilize that ice. Am I correct, Jeff? Go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So at our last meeting, council made a decision on what the ice rental rates were going to be and what the criteria would be to allocate ice time in the event of a conflict. And before we could put together a schedule, we had to know and had to have approval from council to fix those two decisions. What we're working on now, and Curtis and his team is working with the user groups to actually put the names in the boxes for the ice time and draft up those contracts. And as discussed at the last meeting, we would come back to council sometime in June or July when we had a more firm schedule to look at not only what time was going to be actually used and paid for by Thorold user groups, but also what time would have to be acquired from St. Catharines or Brock allocation or vice versa. So if somebody has a final schedule, then they're better persons than we are, because to my knowledge, the final schedule has not been drafted.
There you go.
I respect your answer because you did say that, but I did ask, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I did ask, does the city of Thorold know how many hours that we're going to be accountable for?
And
I didn't get an answer. And this schedule shows that we're accountable for 53 hours of ice time. Rink 1 has a specific amount of hours, and Rink 2 has a specific amount of hours. I have the ice time for St. Catharines, Thorold, and Brock University.
And I
don't want to get debated. So you did say that. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
But I did ask, do we know how many hours we're responsible for? So I know that you're going to the user groups and you're trying to see who's going to use what ice time. But regardless what the user groups say, the schedule I have tells me that we're responsible for 53 hours of ice time per week for 32 weeks.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that. So I'm sorry, but I brought it up, but that's all I asked for last meeting. Did we know? Because I'm trying to get a cost associated with how much the taxpayers are going to be responsible for, Mr. Mayor. That's why I've been asking, how many hours are we responsible for? Because we have figures out there that we've calculated. That's all I've been trying to do, and I'm sorry if you take me the wrong way.
All that information, what he told you was there, and then they're working with the user groups, and when all that comes, it's coming back to council, Councillor Hanley. Okay? Councillor Hanley, you also had opening us parks, splash pads, and ball diamonds.
Yes, if I know the city does come up with a schedule, and I'm not, in regards to the grass and that stuff, I'm actually glad that I haven't cut the grass yet, because the dandelions actually help out the bees. That's their first pollination of the year, whatever. But I have concerns with some parks. Last year, for example, as far as maintaining them on a continuous basis. Martin Street Park, I know it's not a park that's used much for recreational or league baseball and that stuff, and it does go under tenant and gets overgrown. And there's people that live in that area, and I know that McAdam Park and Thorold South, the ball diamond there, I've requested in the past, and I know it does get done, maybe scarified, but I think I'm asking that the parks there get updated a little when we do open the parks, and if we could get a schedule as to when the individuals or the citizens are allowed to go to the parks, or when our splash pads be open. I know it's a month or so away, but the earlier we can get the information out there, the better we can be for individuals planning their summer and swimming lessons and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
I haven't seen any schedules yet.
Jeff and Curtis, once you know the timelines, can you send a memo to council, please? Is that what you're looking for, Councillor Hanley?
Yes. So
okay.
I can
and then we'll
the public,
also
for people that are asking when the parks and the pools may be open for operation.
And then we always post about the splash pads and the pool on our social media as well. Okay. But yes, they'll follow up on that, Councillor Hanley.
Okay. If we could also, and Mr. Mayor, I haven't seen, in regards to summer swimming, is that done, if I could follow up, please, is that done through Thorold Community Activities Group, or does the city of Thorold have anything planned for 2022 as far as swimming programs?
Swimming lessons, or are you talking, Councillor Hanley? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Curtis, can you answer that?
Yes, I can. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the splash pads are scheduled to be open for the long weekend in May. That's what we're targeting, assuming that all operations are good to go. We've already reached out to the region of Niagara for inspections and have that scheduled. Baseball is actually beginning their preseason on Monday at Sullivan and South Confed. However, the weather is sort of hit and miss right now. As you can imagine, the fields are still quite wet. We're expecting more rain. So it's a bit of a juggling match, as well as our students don't actually start until Monday as well. So there's about a week-long training period and onboarding for the students. Once they're up to speed, then we'll be fully up and running with staffing and scheduling and anticipate additional usage and work to happen at that time. So as well as our swimming lessons programs will be coming online soon. The scheduler of those programs is actually on vacation this week. So upon her return, those will be posted as well online. And the pool will be opening slightly before the long weekend in July. We'll say that.
Okay, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you very
and
much.
we'll post that stuff as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to consent reports. I got a mover, Councillor Hanley, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson, that we take consent reports 15.1 through 15.9 unless someone wants to pull a report or speak on a report. So I'll now ask if someone wants to pull a report and speak on it. Go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just PWCS 2022-47 and PWCS 2022-38, please.
Okay, 38. I don't have a 38.
Sorry, I'm looking at the Ellenberg traffic study.
It's at the beginning,
okay,
Mr.
it's
Mayor.
up the front.
It's
Yes.
not in order.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
got
one
that.
out of order.
Anyone else with any other ones other than those two? Councillors Neal.
C 220235, and that's council correspondence. And number 2, just to make sure that is pulled, and because that was my addition to the statement by councilors, to make sure that that is included in the review.
Okay. Okay. So we'll start with these. If there's no changes to these, then we'll go back and move them as a block unless someone makes an amendment, and then we'll have to deal with it separately. So we'll start with PWCS 2022-38, Ellenberg Traffic Safety Study Status. Jeff, I'll let you, do you want to speak on that first?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We have Sean Dunsmore has been spearheading that project online as well. Perhaps he could provide a bit more background if you have a specific question.
Yes, and also, Sean, if you could announce when the public meeting is on that. I didn't have that information for my mayor's report, but I think it'd be a good time to add that date now. So go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The public meeting is going to be on May 10th at the Ellenberg Community Center.
Okay. Councillor Sentence, did you have a question for Sean?
Yeah, I just, that's all I wanted to do was to get that out there. A couple people didn't know, and I just want to thank you guys a lot. I know I've talked to you a lot about this and setting it up. So thank you.
And that will also, that is on, we'll get that out. It's on social media, and we make sure that it stays out, and we keep getting that out there prior to the meeting as well, Councillor Sentence. Okay? Is anyone else want to speak on that Ellenberg safety issue? Go ahead, Councillor Neal.
Just what's the time on that?
Time, go ahead, Sean.
Between 6 and 8 o'clock in the evening.
And that's
Thank you.
at the Ellenberg Community Center, Councillor Neal. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. And that information is available, I think, on our Facebook page as well, and website. Okay? Any further questions on that one? Okay. Then we'll move on to PWCS 2022-47, Confederation West Sound Barrier Update. Go ahead, Jeff.
Once again, Mr. Mayor, Sean can provide any answers that council may have on the process that we intend to follow.
Go ahead, Sean.
Our intent as it relates to the sound barrier, because it impacts the rear yards of so many of the properties along Tulip Tree, our intent is to circulate a individual letter to each of the properties that we plan on doing the work to get some access to the sound barrier at the back, as well as discuss options for any encroachments or modifications to their rear yards that would be required to ensure the proper use of the city property there.
Okay. Is any further questions regarding that particular one? I've got Councillor Sentence, then Councillor Hanley. I got a bunch, but we'll get everybody in. Go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Sean. Thanks again for everyone getting on this so quick. The only question I had from some residents are, after the letter goes out, reasonably, when could they expect to see the rebuild?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have this report is to get us a contractor to rebuild the fence. So we'll have them on board. I guess it'll depend a little bit on the conversations with the individual residents, but I would suspect probably after we come to some sort of agreement with the residents, it'll take about 2 weeks to have the fence at least started to be rebuilt.
Great, thank you again.
Who else had a question regarding that? I seen Councillor Neal, then we'll go Councillor Hanley. I got Councillor DeRose. Go ahead, Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the federal government, provincial government, regional government, and the city of Thorold are all talking about trees and planting more trees, is there any way of planting some trees along the outside of the barrier?
Jeff or Sean?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that wasn't included in the budget. We could certainly evaluate options we already have a contractor on board who plants trees for us. We could certainly talk to them about prices and bring something back to council.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Neal?
That's okay, that's good.
Councillor Hanley, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I'm actually good. Councillor Neal, I was thinking the same thing. If there's some type of artificial barrier we could also use there instead of a solid structure, Thank you.
Councillor DeRose, you had your hand up regarding this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Sean. Sean, I see the expense is in between 250,000 and $1 million. Going forward, is there any way that once the developer puts in their fence that it's up to the homeowner, or is it just because they don't own that land presently? And my second question is, if they do buy this land off the city, are they responsible for future fences? Because I think if we can somehow get that embedded, I think going forward, any property that's adjacent to a highway might need something like that, or we're going to be spending a lot of money with these fences, because it's obvious that the developers' fences don't last very long, unless 15, 17 years is the length of the life of them.
Sean or Jeff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. First thing I would like to talk about the fence itself. This version of the fence and the fence for phase 8 that was just constructed last year is a slightly higher standard than what was originally put in there because of the length that it lasted. We would hope to get at least 25 years out of a fence. Imposing on residents to manage their own sound barrier in that situation is going to be problematic, because it's about $1,500 a meter to repair and replace. That is part of the conversation that we're having with the residents, is if they would prefer to manage it themselves, or if we come up with some other game plan to manage that.
And Sean, is that because the city owns that property?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we own that property for sure.
Okay, now the other thing is it's the removal of encroaching structures. you know, I'm hoping we're a little lenient with this because it is kind of dead land that we can't use. Could I just get your opinion on that, or is it, do they have to buy it to keep those structures on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we're going to come at it with three possible options. One is the purchase of the option. The second is an encroachment agreement to allow, we have that in other locations. I believe we actually have one with you, Councilor DeRose.
Correct, yes.
And so that encroachment agreement approach. And then the third would be to have them remove those structures from the property. There's the encroachment agreement has some responsibilities that not everybody would like to take on. So we are being flexible in terms of trying to come up with a solution, but we would like to get the solution figured out for every one of the properties.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
Any further questions regarding that? Jeff, did you want to speak on that, or you're good?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Okay. So we're going to take this one separately and vote on it. I had a mover, Councillor Hanley, seconder, Councillor Wilson, PWCS 2022-47. And the reason why I'm doing that is because we had a staff direction to bring back something on the trees, possibility, okay? So the Confederation West Sound Barrier Update Tender Award. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. And before we do the rest, Councillor Neal, you wanted to speak on CC 2022-35.2. You wanted to make sure that was included in your earlier remarks. Am I correct? You're muted, Councillor Neal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I want to make sure that that's put in regard, because it's a very good report. It summarizes a lot of what we discussed at our last council meeting about it. And it would give staff an excellent opportunity to take a look at the report and maybe put some of the things from the report into our review.
Okay, so you've captured that from before. Okay, that's been captured. Okay, Councillor?
Thank you.
Okay, so now I had a mover, Councillor Hanley, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson, that we do the rest of them. So that's 15A, B, C, D, E, G, H, I, because we've done F. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Now we move on to discussion reports. PWCS 2022-11 Thorold Museum Development Plan, and I'll turn this over to Jeff Holman, Director of Public Works and Community Services. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation for this report is 1, that the development plan for the Thorold Museum as outlined in this report be approved. 2, that a license agreement between the City of Thorold and the Thorold Museum for the use of the space at Ellenberg Community Center and Lock 7 Tourist Center be approved. 3, that staff be directed to provide administrative, technical, and logistical support to help with the transition to a new operating business model. 4, that funding in the amount of $8,000 be allocated from the encumbrance reserve to support the development plan expenditures expected in 2022. And 5, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute under the corporate seal a license agreement with the Thorold Museum to grant an exclusive license to use the second floor of the Ellenberg Community Center located at 1560 Fall Street in the city of Thorold. Thank you.
And now I'll open the floor for questions regarding this report. Are there? Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through Mr. Mayor. Jeff, have they accepted the terms of this? I will support this. Have they accepted the terms of this agreement? Are they cordial with it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been working extensively with Randy Barnes and Steve Fulton, and have attended the museum board's meeting a couple of weeks back. And we've gone through a couple of different iterations of the license agreement. They've provided their final comments to me on the weekend, and we've incorporated into this report. Typically we would bring a signed license agreement to you, but because of the timing, we haven't been able to do so. I would prefer not to speak on their behalf, but I would say that they are 100% supportive of the report and the license agreement that you have in front of you tonight.
Thank you, Jeff. Go on, continue. Councillor DeRose, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. And Jeff, I printed off some of the report just because I hate reading off the tablet. So I'm not sure if this is your report or one you attached of Marco's from the fall, but I'm a little concerned that you guys were trying to, like you said, you've been working with them, helping them. And I think number 3 in your presentation alluded to that city staff is pretty well going head over heels and trying to accommodate them. But it's also stated that you guys had mentioned to them to have to try to establish a charitable or non-profit status, and they haven't done so yet. And then it goes on to say that to staff's knowledge, the Thorold Historical Society has not looked into writing any specific applications based on the listing of programs suggested provided. With this in mind, we've also communicated to the group, the Clerk's Department, Economic Development Department would assist in vetting any applications that we put forward. It's been made clear we would not be able to write the physical applications, but we could provide editing and a review of their applications. And this service has not been utilized to date, as no formal applications have been made or submitted for review. So all I'm saying, I don't know if anything's changed since then and your meeting the other day, but all I'm saying is I think they have to start helping themselves also. I will support this 100%. I think it's important, but I think they're displaying some lackadaisicalness, if you want to call it, if that's even a word. But I think they need to be a little more assertive, and because I have a feeling in the future they're just going to keep coming and asking for more and more money. But 8,000 is nothing. I think what they're going to be asking in the future. So I think they have to get their house in order, in my opinion. And I'm saying that in a respectful manner. So it's more of a comment, but thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jeff Holman. Jeff, would there be any infrastructure costs with Ellenberg Center, for them using the second floor? I know they'd have to have washroom access, I guess, also.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, those arrangements will be provided through the terms of the license agreement. So yeah, they'll have access to washrooms. There's no capital improvements or leasehold improvements contemplated at the moment. If there's anything that's required, they'll have to raise the funds for them. But the whole idea here is, and I appreciate the question, they need some help. We need to commit to them if we're serious about having a museum in the community. And by setting this kind of 3-year window, it starts the clock for everyone to come on board with respect to, what is the governance model? How are we going to work? And how is it going to be funded? The short answer to your question, Councillor Handley, is we'll give them what they need to be successful within the parameters of this report.
Okay, thank you. Good report. Appreciate it. I'll be supportive of it.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, of course, history is very important, and they're the group that has the history and moving forward with it. And I agree with staff that they needed a little bit of direction. They have a good group of people on that board, but they needed some direction and maybe a little helping hand along the way. And this will give them the 3-year period in order to accomplish what they should have accomplished previously, but didn't have the direction to do that. So I agree with the other councillors that have already spoken that I agree with this plan, and hopefully they will run with it and create a permanent place for the historical artifacts that are there.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about the lighting, and I'm trying to get by here. Thank you. This is great. I didn't know this was coming up. I appreciate staff doing this, and I was going to ask if the group knew about this as well. So I think this is fantastic. They just needed help, and their problem anytime I talked to them was personnel. They didn't have enough people to do what they needed to do, and they lost some people who had all the knowledge that could write, up something to get them the charitable status and stuff. So this is fantastic. So thank you, staff.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I think this is a positive step forward. I've got a mover, again, I said Councillor Neal, and a seconder, Councillor Kenny, on PWCS 2022-11. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. PWCS 2022-40. Port Robinson Eco Park South Main Street Bridge project phasing. And again, I'll turn this over to Jeff Holman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Having some trouble with my computer again.
The motion's up on our screen here, so.
Okay. I'll read it from the screen then. The recommendation is that report PWCS 2022-40, dated Monday, April 11th, 2022, respecting Port Robinson Eco Park South Main Street Bridge project phasing be received, and the following recommendations be approved. 1, that the phasing plan for the Port Robinson Eco Park South Main Street Bridge project be approved. 2, that McIntosh Perry Consulting Engineers Limited be engaged to complete the Phase 1 environmental enhancement strategy at an upset limit cost of $11,000, excluding HST. And 3, that Phase 1 of the project be funded from the remaining funds available in the Port Robinson Eco Park Design South Main Street Bridge project.
And now I'm going to open the floor for questions regarding this. Go ahead, Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing I might comment on, it's a very good report, and we're moving forward on this, which I know the Port Robinson people will just love. And the one thing that I might comment on, though, we just set up a new committee, an environmental tree committee, I'll call it. And what I would like to see happen is that particular committee have input into the things that are happening with the Port Robinson conservation area.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. I know that there's an individual there that's interested in being involved, so we can see about that, because that's an important aspect to have their voice heard. So. Anything else? Councillor Sentence, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, through you, this is another great report. I think it's important we keep putting money and ideas towards us to keep it alive, keep it going, look for funding, look for more funding than that, and look for the future, there'll be future councils, but look for ways to, creatively fund this like we have in other projects. So good report, and let's keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanley, go ahead.
Have the same report. It's great to see that it's coming to fruition. There's we had some great public consultations and public meetings, and the day that I attended the bridge, 2 or 3 kayakers went in the water. There was people fishing. It was an active area. It was great to see while the consultants were on hand, and it's going to be a boost. A great ecotourism area out there. We got the Welland Canals Trail right there. We got the ferry area with all the cyclists coming across. We got the Cross Niagara route. So I can't wait to come to fruition. It's great to see it start, and only going to be better things to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I had a mover, Councillor Sentence, and a seconder, Councillor DeRose. PWCS 2022-40. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. That's another positive step forward. Okay. PDS 2022-21, Building Official and Bylaw Enforcement Compensation. And I believe that Jason Simpson will take this report forward. Go ahead, Jason, Chief Building Official.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the recommendations of this report are one, that the Planning and Development Services Report PDS 2022-21 be received. Two, that an operating budget overrun of $50,000 funded from the Building Permit Reserve be approved for the Building Services Division. And three, that a general operating budget overrun of $30,000 be approved for the Bylaw Enforcement Division. And that concludes the recommendations of this report.
Thank you, Jason. Now we'll open the floor for questions and discussion. Anyone that want to speak to that or have questions for Jason? Go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supportive of this. I know we need to do it. I don't have a problem with it. I just, again, want to make sure that we get everyone from, unionized workers outside to everyone done, in this term of council, so somebody doesn't have to take care of it next time. When we are doing things like this, I had an idea or a thought, and I don't know if it's out of line or not, but we keep going back and forth with these numbers and keeping people and making sure everyone's paid the amount, and that's great. But we can't get caught up in bidding wars with other cities all the time. Is it possible, just a recommendation or a thought to the CAO, when you guys get together as a group, or at least the groups that are, the same sizes as us when it comes to, doing this, can we somehow get together with them and have a guideline where we're all paying the same amount instead of bidding against each other and losing people and getting people? And we talk about doing services together and buying together. I just think that would be a much better way to go, instead of, Port Colborne goes up $5,000 and then, well, we got to go up $5,000. And we seem to be in a bidding war with each other. So I'll support this, but that's just a question or a thought I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Go ahead.
Yeah, just following up on that is, I thought we were going to have a report regarding salaries and wages from both the unionized staff and our regular staff come forward at a time when we take a look at all the different aspects of paying people competitive wage compared to other communities around us. And I thought that was coming forward, but maybe
I think it's
our CEO Manoj can maybe talk to that.
Yeah, he will, because parts of it have already come forward, but he'll speak on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council has directed us to go and look at the whole grid for the union, and on that we have engaged a consultant, and consultant has put together a report. We have provided the report to union, and there is a letter of understanding that has been signed by the union that we are looking at. The process is taking longer time. I have Ashley Ide here, our manager of human resources. She can able to explain a little bit more on that. But the report in front of you here, Council, is that there are 4 positions that has been identified, as identified in the report. Very difficult for us to retain. Our building inspectors, plan examiners, they already get a market premium, and so is our bylaw enforcement, but the premium is not sufficient. So what I'll do is, Mr. Mayor, I will pass it on to Ms. Ide for further clarification.
Go ahead, Ashley.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So as Manoj said, as a direction by council, we did engage with Marianne Love Consulting again to do a market review of the unionized positions. We prepared all the documentation that was required for her to do so. She has completed the report. A report has been provided to the union. And from there, we have, just as Manoj said, signed a letter of understanding with the union regarding the remainder of the positions to be reviewed. These 4 positions have been identified as being significantly underpaid in comparison to the rest of the positions. And currently we are struggling to be able to recruit specifically for the building positions. We were recently in a position where we had 9 unionized positions and only 3 unionized staff in them. So we're We are desperately looking to recruit, and this is one of the challenges that has been presented, and it seems that that aligns well with the fact that we are challenged by recruitment.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Kenny.
Okay, it says in the report that we just got, in 2021, council requested a market comparison reviewed to be conducted for all unionized positions employed by the city of Thorold. So here we've identified 4 positions. Okay, the problem is 2 years ago when we asked for this, the staff all got their raises. Then council proceeded to vote themselves a raise and the mayor a raise. And we said at the time, we're going to get the unionized guys a review. This was last March of 2021. Nothing's been done. Council asked for the report. Now we got the union in negotiations, and we have, of course we can't talk about it because they're in negotiations, but we asked for the review. Council asked for the review. What about the guy that digs the sewers? The guys that line the baseball fields and soccer fields? The guy that clean the ice? The guys that work at the cemetery? So they're all in negotiations now, and we can't talk about it. But we asked for a report on all these jobs. You're coming to us now with these 4 positions because they're needed, you're telling us, with a budget overruns of $80,000. I think you're putting council in a bad position here, where this should have been, if it was done last year like we asked in March or April, and it should have been budgeted for when we did the budget 3 months ago. Okay? You can say, well, we're taking it from a reserve, or we're taking it, part of it's coming from the levy. Okay? It should have been budgeted, and we shouldn't have touched reserves. And now we're in a position where we need people. And I think if this review was done in a timely fashion last year, I mean, it was done quickly for the staff. It was done quickly for the council. It was done quickly for the mayor last March and April so that we got our raises. But for some reason, it's 14.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor.
That's not correct information. Nothing was done quickly for anybody. They all were staff reports.
I think I got the floor.
Okay,
can I finish talking?
I'm saying
and then you can,
point of order because you're giving false information.
Listen.
Last
Mr.
March,
Mayor?
It's a point
last
of order.
March,
Councillor
last
Kenny.
March, council
Councillor
voted
Kenny.
themselves a
I'm
raise.
speaking.
It was based on a report
Wait,
from
wait,
staff
correct.
with
Wait.
information
Councillor
that was
Kenny.
all research. So don't say that all these
Councillor
decisions were
Wilson.
made by council.
You come through the chair, and if you ain't the point of order, let me make a ruling on it. I'm not having a sidebar conversation here in a council meeting.
Perfect. Make a ruling on it then, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So, Councillor Kenny, those reports took time to come to council, and this has been explained by Ashley and where they're at and how that program is moving forward and that it's well underway. So that's the end of that discussion on that item. Do you have any further?
So, yes, I would like to know when the council is going to get the report. Like she said, I think she said that they've got an agreement with the union that they're going to get the report, but I think the report was requested by the council. When are we going to get the report?
Ashley, you can answer that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the report was completed and provided to the union. The letter of understanding that we have with the union is regarding the process for job evaluation and to put jobs in appropriate bands. I can't really speak any further to this due to the fact that we are in negotiations, and I'm not able to share further details on that specific decision. I'm not sure whether or not the CAO, Manoj Jawaria, has anything to say about whether or not council will receive the report.
I think what we can ask is, next council meeting, can we go on camera to discuss this with an update?
Yeah, I think that was my point, that council should have got the report ahead of negotiations.
Councillor Kenny.
As we requested.
Councillor Kenny,
I fully understand what you're saying. When you're in negotiations, you can't talk about it, and I don't want you to.
Councillor Kenny, I'm in discussion with the CAO. He's going to speak, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if you want further discussions, we can have a next council meeting. We can bring a report in camera and provide all the details about the process, what has been taken place so far, what has been the process that has been followed so far, what are the next steps. So it's a involved process that Ms. Ait has mentioned, and we will be able to share every aspect of it at the in-camera meeting at the next council meeting.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Kenny.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor DeRose, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. What Councillor Senton said previously really resonated with me, because I've been wondering, why can't, can we reach out to Councillor Whalen, our regional councillor, to maybe have some discussions and get some feedback at the region as far as coordinating salaries across the board, across the region? It's very challenging, and after speaking to Manoj several times this week, it's very challenging for Thorold to compete with these communities that have a larger tax base. Thorold's only got 9,300 tax accounts, can't compare to St. Catharines, 49,700. So I'm just wondering, so I find it's from speaking to our CAO, it's a challenge for us to compete for these positions. And there's a shortage right now, specifically in building. And it's I'm sure they're very frustrated. And so I'm just wondering, is there anything we could do, Mr. Mayor? Or I don't know if staff would have an answer to CAO, maybe to get Councillor Whalen to look at this as a regional issue, whereas we're all on the same playing field.
Go ahead, Tour.
Mr. Mayor, we did discuss that at the area CEOs forum as well, that we should have one consultant looking after all the municipalities, at least the similar size ones, and then we should all have the similar kind of wages, similar stuff. That process has been discussed, but region on its own, that they do theirs. There's a different level of government, they do theirs. But certainly we have floated the idea among the area CEOs that we can all look at it ourselves, so that we are not in these bidding wars that Council Sentence has pointed out. I totally agree with that. It is very frustrating for us that if we even compare ourselves with similar sized municipalities, depending on the levels, we are not in the same bands and all those things, and then people do move from one job to other for better wages. So certainly we will continue that discussion at the area CEOs, but at this point in time, what happens is every municipalities, they hire their own consultant and do their reviews. That's the practice. But I can assure you that in the past, this has been discussed at the area CEOs, so that we can have a one consultant looking after every one of us, so that we don't have this kind of problems. And there are issues, certainly in certain positions. It's demand and supply situation. There are certain areas, especially building, that there is scarcity of individuals, and everybody is experiencing that issues as well. So we are also looking at, from that standpoint, for building services, some shared services, so that we have a pool of resources that can be shared by various municipalities. So there are various options that are being considered, but thank you very much for bringing it forward. Thanks.
So that can you continue to push that at the CAO's level, please? Councillor Neal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think maybe Councillor DeRose could move it, and I'll second it, that we give direction to the CAOs to look at creating a cross-the-board type of situation for definitely some different types of staff to that nature. I think maybe a motion to have direction to the CAOs to follow up on this.
So you want to give staff direction to Manoj, which, do we need a motion for staff direction? Okay, so I got a mover, who's moving it? Councillor DeRose, second, or Councillor Neal, that we give staff direction to the CAO to continue this discussion at the CAO level. Is that good? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay. That is, so that we'll deal with that first. Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make a brief comment here. I'm not an employment lawyer, and I'm not a union guy. I've never been in a union, but and unions are great for what they do, but this hints to me as collusion. Like, I don't know how you could expect all of the area municipalities to get together and set a wage scale. I don't think the unions would like that, but then again, I'm not a union guy, so I'm not sure if it would work. We probably need some legal help on this.
I think he's looking for it.
And I agree with what Councillor Kenny said. He makes a good point. We asked for a report. We're getting dribs and drabs here. We're trying to piecemeal this together. We got to take a more wholesome look at this. We need to realize, we talk about the growth of the city, how fast we're growing. Yet we want the big population numbers, but we don't want to do anything about our staff levels. We're in a bind here because we haven't put enough money aside for our staff, and it's going to come back to haunt us. We're going to take some money out of a reserve here. I'm not sure if council realizes what that does. We've set the scale to have an automatic tax increase for next year to fill that void. So we need to have a much more wholesome discussion, probably in camera, because I think we're talking about a lot of union type issues here, and we may be getting ourselves in trouble or saying too much. But those are just some comments on the whole subject that I'd like to relay.
And Councillor Longo, I think that what they're discussing here, though, at the CAO level is to looking at not just union jobs, you're looking at the portfolio of all jobs. Am I right, Councillor DeRose?
Yeah, and just discussions at this point, just to get some feedback.
And they're having those discussions as it is, but you just want to give direction that they keep those discussions going. Am I correct?
Correct, Mr. Mayor.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's just to keep those discussions ongoing. Okay, so that is the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, now we're back to the original motion. Any further discussion on that? I had a mover, Councillor Wilson, and a seconder, Councillor Longo, on PDS 2022-21. Any further discussion? All those in favor? What?
Councillor Kenny had his hand up.
Okay, where is he? I can't see. It's so dark there. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to Councillor Longo's point, so this is going to add 0.33 to the tax levy next year, according to the numbers. So the council next year is going to start off that much in the hole because of this.
I'm going to get clarified.
I'm supporting it, believe me.
No,
I'm supporting it.
I know.
We need it.
But I think the building services section of it is done by fees. Jason, can you clarify that, please?
It says part of it's has to come from the levy in the report.
I know, but he's going to explain that, clarify that. Go ahead, Jason.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the budget overrun for the building staff would be fully funded, just like their wages are, out of the building permit reserve. However, the bylaw enforcement division budget overrun would come from the levy unless we're able to obtain enough revenue in 2022 to offset that overrun.
Okay, so the 50,000 part of it is coming from the building services reserve, right? And would continue to be paid for by permitting. It's just the bylaw portion that would be on the levy. Am I correct with that? I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay. Councillor Neal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just follow up on Councillor Longo's point is when I first brought this up tonight, looking at salaries as a whole, and a report was supposed to come back and hasn't yet, but will be coming back, is I agree with Councillor Longo. We're, in 5 years, we've grown from, 17,000 people to 23,000 people. We don't have the staff to look after our expansion in Thorold. We don't. Well, and I hope that the staff report that will come back will deal with what Councillor Longo has mentioned in the report.
And those report would be prioritized as well for next year's budget on what positions, and ultimately would be the new council's decision in budget 2023 to make, okay? Correct? Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Bylaws. First reading of the bylaws. Bylaw 39-2022, Bylaw 47-2022, Bylaw 48-2022, Bylaw 27-2022, and I got a mover, Councillor Kenny, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson, that lead be give to introduce these bylaws and that they now be read a first time. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Final reading of the bylaws. Again, mover Councillor Kenny and a seconder Councillor Wilson, that the bylaws just read first time be read a second and third time and do pass. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. There being no further business, this meeting is hereby adjourned at 8:26 p.m. And I want to thank everybody, and thank you for your participation, and until next time, or specially called. And there'll be some stuff going out again. Don't forget there is a public meeting on the Ellenberg safety, and there'll be some correspondence going out as well on any